This is the Coach's Wife Life podcast. I'm Kristen Eargle, your host, a former TV sports reporter and fellow college football coach's wife. I'll go one-on-one with the strong women who are the backbone of college athletics and athletics of all levels. And now, Coach's Wife Life.
This podcast is brought to you by Ruler of Hope. Ruler of Hope is a nonprofit that supports medically fragile children. If you'd like to make a tax-deductible donation, you can use Venmo at Ruler-Hope or online at rulerofhope.org.
Hey there, I'm Kristen Eargle, and we have an exciting podcast ahead. But first, I want to talk about something we all know way too much about: moving. Just the thought of that can bring an unsettling emotion. Well, I found a team that can take that load off your plate. It's D1 Relocation. This group can do it all. They can organize your move, coordinate with a moving company, and a trusted real estate agent. They can actually vet key household partners such as schools, insurance agents, physicians in the area. They can even help set up your Wi-Fi and water. It's incredible. So I've come to know this team, which is actually founded by a coach's wife. I think you should check it out. Whether you're looking to move now or in the future, it's d1relocation.com. Now on to our awesome podcast. I am so excited to bring you my next guest on the podcast. This is Tara Trickett. She's from West Virginia's offensive line associate head coach's wife, Rick Trickett. Thank you for being on.
You're most welcome. So thank you for having me.
You have an incredible coach's wife life career. This will be 45 years as a coach's wife.
That is
you may be the most experienced that I've ever had on. It's got to be close. I am so excited to hear your thoughts on all this. Some of the places you've been at have been so fun to get to dive into. Currently at West Virginia. I'm going to go back to the beginning. You started at West Virginia, is that right? And
Rick, my husband did.
Your husband did. And you linked up Southern Illinois, then you went to Southern Miss, New Mexico, Memphis, Mississippi State, Auburn, Glenville State, LSU, West Virginia, Florida State, Glenville State, Jacksonville State, and then West Virginia right now. That's a lot of moves. I don't even know if I've counted them up right there. So what was your welcome to being a coach's wife moment for you?
Oh, goodness, my welcome to the moment. Well, it all started, I think I met Rick, when I was actually a graduating senior when he had been at West Virginia, and then coaching staff had changed, as we all know it does, and he was with Coach Signetti actually then, and he left and he came to Southern Illinois, and that is actually where I met him. So it kind of all began right there, and I had moved to South Florida for a little bit after graduation. And then when I returned is when we actually started dating and everything. And it all happened kind of fast when I think back out on it now, but it was just kind of one of those. But I grew up around football. I grew up around basketball. I've always been a cheerleader. I was a cheerleader in college. And so it was always something that I kind of understood and everything. So it worked out just great when we started. And then we were only there at SIU our first season. And then we started the moving. And the first move was down to Southern Miss. And that was the first time that I'd really been away from home. And so, you know how that goes. Yeah.
But oddly enough, Southern Miss was my first away from home. Yes, Hattiesburg, Mississippi was the first time I really moved away. Sweet little town. Okay, so how did y'all exactly meet? I mean, where was that moment?
Okay, that's kind of an interesting story in nowadays climate, I guess. I was a cheerleader. So we worked actually in the arena at the time at SIU, and for our student jobs, and that's where I met him. He had come in as a new coach, and then came downstairs to the equipment room and area where we were working, and that's when I first met him. And I thought he was at that, like I said, he's a little bit older than I am, so I thought he was just some old guy, and he was funny and clever and everything. But that's when we kind of first became friends. And then when I came back in the fall, he actually had a girlfriend, and I had been dating one of the guys on the team, but he's asked me to kind of show her around and sit with her and everything. So that's what we, kind of how it started, is just friends and everything. And then that kind of fizzled, and mine did. And he started to ask me out. So that's how it all began.
Wow.
And then a long time ago.
Yes, definitely. Okay, so you've been married almost 45 years, and
Yeah.
then you have 3 sons. Tell me about them.
Okay, my oldest is Travis, and Travis is here now. He was born in Hattiesburg at Southern Miss. We were there for almost 4 years, and we were there probably for about 2 or 3 years. Well, about 3 years, I guess, before I had him. And he, of course, is now the senior offensive assistant here at WVU with Coach Rodriguez. And then I have Chance. We had made a move. That's when we moved to New Mexico. We were only there for a short time, and totally different for me than what I grew up with and everything, out west. But then we returned to Memphis, and then I had my second son, Chance, who, like I said earlier, he was with the Los Angeles Rams. He had coached in recruiting before. He was at Florida State and Louisiana Tech, and then he was with the Rams as a scouting, a local scout for about 10 years, and then decided Coach Rodriguez, with all the changes that are being made in the recruiting area, offered him a position. So he's the director of player evaluation up here. And so he decided to take that route. I think I have to back up a little bit. Travis is married to my daughter-in-law, Tiffany, and they have 3 children, which of course, all my grandchildren are my heart.
Yes.
That's Maverick, Cammie, and Holden. And then Chance has 2 boys and his wife, Ashley, and they are expecting their 3rd boy.
Wow.
So they're going to be relocating next month up here to West Virginia. They are in the Jacksonville, Florida area right now. And then my youngest son, Clint, he and his wife, Kaylee, have 1 baby that's a year old, Jameson, and he was just hired as the offensive coordinator at the University of Maryland. So they're only about 3 hours from us now because, and we actually have a home right outside of Destin. That's our home. That when these last moves, we were at Florida State for many years. And when Rick kind of thought he might want to retire because he was at that age, but wasn't quite for sure what he wanted to do. So that was about 4 months there. And then he was like, no, this is not for me. And so that's kind of restarted the cycle again. So, but it's kind of an interesting story, to some, but anyway, that's kind of where we are now.
So at one point you thought you were going to retire, and then he said no.
Well, yes, he after the Florida State, that's when we decided to build our retirement home, which was right. That's where we always vacation. It was right there on the beach between Destin and Panama City, 30A.
I love 30A.
So we're real close to that. And so that's what we thought we'd go ahead and try and start the house there. And then he was like, it was about 4 months that he wasn't doing a whole lot. And he said, no, this is not for me. He says, I'm not done. So that's when he came back on up to Glenville State, which is his alma mater. And he was there that's in West Virginia also, because he is born and raised in West Virginia. Well, he was born in West Virginia, then raised in Mobile, Alabama, and then came back to the state. But very familiar, got a lot of close friends up here and family. So he was up at Glenville. And then Rich, we always had a really good relationship with Rich and Rita Rodriguez and everything. So when Rich took the Jacksonville State job, he said he wanted him to come down there. So Rick did. And we love Jacksonville. Jacksonville's great. It's a great little town, great people, and very happy there. And so it kind of worked out real well. And then when Rich decided to go back to WVU, at the time, Charles Kelly was then hired, which was a year ago. Charles Kelly was hired at Jacksonville State, and he hired Clint as the offensive coordinator there. So Rick chose to stay down there for this past year. And then Rich contacted him again about coming back up, because Clint was going to be moving on and everything. And of course, we were so blessed because, like I said, Coach Rodriguez has been very good to our family, and Travis was already here. And then, of course, we came, and then hiring Chance. So this is kind of unusual to be able to coach with your sons and your, so it's great for us. I mean, it's all still kind of new, but really, really enjoyable and really looking forward to it. we are fortunate to have here with Coach Rodriguez. He has like a family night at the stadium where we can come and eat with the team, on the training table and the team and everything. So our first dinner there, Chance's family's not here yet, but there's Travis's family and Rick and myself, and then Chance. And of course, we took up the whole table.
Right.
Like when Chance is here, we're going to have to pull another table in, for his two boys, and of course until the baby gets here and for Ashley. But it was so nice and so fun, and just really excited and looking forward to the year and everything. But the boys are really enjoying coaching around their dad. They're really enjoying it. Clint and Rick, of course, got to spend all last year together. Clint was the offensive coordinator at Jacksonville State, and it worked very well and everything, and truly enjoyed it. And it's just a special time. It's something that they're, just everyone I think is enjoying it. So we've been very blessed. Very blessed.
When your sons told you that they wanted to go into coaching, did you have mixed feelings about it at all? Because it's such a volatile.
Most definitely. And Rick really, he kind of handled that when Travis first told him that, because back at that time, Travis we were here at WVU, and Travis was in, starting his collegiate experience. And he told Rick, he said, and he was a student coach, but Rick was like, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to, you're going to, he made him get his degree in business. Mm-hmm. So, he got his undergrad in marketing and everything. And then he got his MBA, but from Florida State. But anyway, at that time, Travis still wanted to coach. He said, it's what I want to do, Dad, because he just felt like, he wanted him not just to go on, he wanted him to have other opportunities and other options and to consider other things, because it's not easy. No. It's not what how it goes. I mean, it's but it's fun, and it's a wonderful experience, and I've thoroughly loved it. I've thoroughly loved being a coach's wife, and the coaching community and the camaraderie that you feel with the other families and the friends that you make. It's not that it's always easy, but I don't think life is really supposed to be easy. But it's always been an adventure. I mean, each place that we've moved and each thing that we've made, it's always been something that you may not initially be very happy about the move, but once you're there, it always seems to work out. I mean, it always, like I said, I've been so blessed to be able to move to the places that I've moved to and make the friends that I've made that are still lifelong friends. Mm-hmm. So, not only in neighbors, but in the coaching community. So
I couldn't agree more. I love that. And like you mentioned, one of my favorite questions to ask on the podcast, sometimes can be sad, but it's the truth, is that this is not an easy profession. We go through things that are really, really tough on and off the field. If you were to think about maybe some of the toughest adversity you faced in this last 40 years, what would it be? And who did you rely on to get through those moments?
Well, I have a very strong faith and very good relationship with the Lord. So that is probably my primary what would get me through. But, and of course we're very close with my family, and of course, then with the kids and the boys and all of as we've gotten older, with my grandchildren and everything. But I think of course, it's always hard when you're let go. That is always a struggle. It's a struggle initially. Like I said, when I first moved, I had not really moved a lot of places because I went to school that was very close to home. Mm-hmm. So when moving away that first time, that was really the first time I was away from my family, my friends, everything that I knew. And that was down to Southern Miss, like I said. But it's so nice within the coaching community that you have this bond. And, and I think that's something that's probably throughout time. It's changed. The business has changed. I think, it's always evolving and everything, but that bond and that is something that I think that's going to, with withstand the test of time, because that's something that doesn't change. You're still in a particular situation that it's kind of like your family away from home, your coaching family, or at least that's my experience. That's what I've had. And so I know that, back then, that was before, of course, long before cell phones, long before social media, long before being able to keep in contact. I remember when we went to, when we moved, we had been in Memphis, and I had the two little boys at the time, and we moved to Starkville, to Mississippi State. Well, at Memphis, there was everything. I mean, everything at your fingertips, shopping, all this kind, everything. We had.
That's my hometown, by the way.
Oh, it is Memphis.
Yes. Yeah, Germantown.
Okay, yes, we were right out there, right by Germantown. I mean, that's where we lived, and it was great because, I mean, like I said, and we had a great neighborhood, and I've made such close friends there, and the kids had friends and everything. And then we moved, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going down to Starkville, and there's not a lot at Starkville at first. I thought, it was, and I thought, I remember going down, and by the time I got there, because it's not a long trip, driving, but my eyes were swollen shut from crying so much, but that was just such short-lived, because then I met one of my dearest, closest friends, and Lisa Berry, and because Todd and Rick were on the staff together, and oh my gosh, it was fantastic. And I have such wonderful memories. And then I met friends from my church, my neighbors, the kids' kids' friends and their parents. And it was great. It was fantastic. So I think that each place that we've moved, it might be a struggle initially, but it's worked out beautifully. I mean, it truly has. So the hardest part, I think, is when, like for instance, we were at Auburn then. We went after Auburn, and then we were, back up a little bit at Starkville, we did have a coaching change midway, and Rick was retained, but my best friend was not. And I was crushed. And I mean, because we spent so much time together, and then she had to go other across the country. And of course, nowadays it's so much easier to keep in touch, because you do have, Facebook and FaceTime, and, able to, keep up. But back then you didn't. So we would do little bitty cassette tapes, and it cost so much on the phone bill, your long distance bill was outrageous, so,
yes.
So we couldn't talk on the phone all the time. So we would make little cassette tapes and mail them to each other, so that we could have conversations. Yes. I mean, I remember that it was so, because like I said, we were really attached, but it worked out until still to this day. I consider Lisa one of my very closest friends. And, but then we moved on, and it's been great. Auburn was great. But, we were let go at the end of our time there, and so it's like, you didn't want to leave because it'd been so good. I loved Auburn. I loved my church family there, and all of my neighbors and our staff and everything. It was a great experience. But, so then we came back to Glenville just for a few months. We weren't there really for even a year, but we were fortunate enough that Rick was able to do what he has that bond there with our good friends, the Morrises, there in Glenville, and everything. And we got a lot of family and friends there. But then Nick called, Coach Saban, and they've coached before at WVU first go round. So Nick was like, I need you to help me to put a staff together. I'm headed to LSU. So then we, headed down to Baton Rouge and got back into the swing of thing again. So,
wow. So I could talk to you for hours.
I don't know about that, but like I said, I don't know how relevant I am nowadays, that if any of these younger wives, but
well, I think it's the same thing though. We're all facing, I think no matter what level you're on, whether it's high school or Power 4, we all go through the same things.
It's definitely.
It's the same emotion of being rejected or pouring your heart out and it just didn't, and then forgiving what you felt like was done wrong and truly moving forward and go, okay, God has a purpose and a plan.
Yes.
And he will sustain us through this.
Yes.
We may not feel it in the moment, but he is there.
Yes, I agree. And, that's another thing that I remember feeling back, when you're feeling at like, okay, you're at the smaller schools. Now, Rick has been very fortunate that he's been always been at like the Division I schools, with the exception of Glenville State, but he has been fortunate there. But there are different levels now. Of course, that they're powerful at 4, but back then, you had Division I, 1A, Division II, Division III, so on. But I remember as a young wife thinking, oh, I just can't wait till we get the opportunity to, just, oh, please, I want to get that phone call, that anxiousness. And I think that's probably at whatever level you on, because that your guy is a great coach, and that he's got a lot to offer.
Right.
And you just hope that somehow somebody's going to see him and recognize that, and give him that opportunity. So, and like I said, we were blessed. We it finally happened, and we've definitely been at the pinnacle. That's for sure. I mean, we were undefeated at Auburn, and then undefeated again at Florida State, and won the national championship there. So, that's been all fun. Great.
It has. Okay. So, for those of us that may not win a national title in our career, not everybody does.
No.
What does it feel like?
Well, it was so much fun. And that's it. And since you contacted me and asked me to do this, I've been kind of reminiscing and thinking about things that, you might ask or that we might talk about. And, the first go round when we were at Auburn, that was so exciting. That was so much fun. We were coming in and we went undefeated. They were placed on probation from the previous staff, so we didn't get to claim the national title at that time, but we were the only team in the country that was undefeated that particular year in 93. But then we went 19 games without losing, and that's pretty good in the SEC.
Yes.
So that was just thrilling. I just remember it was so exciting. It was so much fun and everything, which was probably one of the reasons why I loved Auburn so much. And then we had so many good years, but we also had bad years too. I mean, like for instance, our first year when we went to Memphis, we were 1-11, and no offense, but our one win was Vanderbilt, and that was back when Vandy was struggling. Everybody goes up and down. But it was like but we still had our staff. And you just made it work. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It was just, we were disappointed, but we were all disappointed together. But we all kind of still had faith. We knew what we could do. So, and then it got better. I mean, before we left Memphis, in 1 year, we had beat Alabama. We had beat there. We beat Alabama there. We beat Florida. I mean, I was just like crazy. It was all these, big teams and everything. So, and then when we got to Florida State, we got there first with Coach Bowden, and we could always had a very close relationship with the Bowdens, having coached with Tommy before and Terry before, and then with Coach Bowden, which, what an honor. That was great. So, it was a lot of fun. And then Jimbo became the coach there, and we had a long previous relationship with Jimbo also. So winning the national championship was a lot of fun, but I didn't get to experience it fully at the time, because at that time in my life, I was also a Division I quarterback's mother. So the mother kind of took precedence over being a coach.
Which son was this?
That was Clint.
Clint. Okay.
Yes. So he started off his career at Florida State with us, being quarterback, and he was very successful. That's the mother talking. But then we had Jameis Winston come in, which was a phenomenal quarterback too. So Clint felt like his best bets were to, look elsewhere. So he came to West Virginia, with those ties that we have, and had a great success here also. But that particular year of our year I was also doing double duty. I was every one of his games, and then every one that I could go to Florida State was on and that was our year that we won the national championship. So I was, but being mother was up above, the coach's wife. So
I didn't really know it until, and sounds small, but my 14-year-old plays travel softball, and you don't really think about what parents go through until you go through it. Do you think it's harder to be a player's mom or a coach's wife, or they both have their hard?
Oh, they're both difficult, but me having experienced both, it's, I feel it's being the mother.
Yeah.
It was, because I looking back, like Clint, for instance, he had 5 concussions in 1 season, 5. That is hard.
Mhm.
That is hard when you are dealing with that. Rick's a grown adult. We have our disappointments. We want to win so desperately, but he can handle it.
Right.
He can handle it. So I honestly think that the being the mother was more stressful for me. It may not be for some, but as a mother of a player, that's, and it was interesting going through the whole recruiting process because
yes, that's what I couldn't wait for. I mean, we've been doing this for years on the other side. I can't wait to get entertained, right?
Well, and that was so different because, and like I said, recruiting's changed a little bit, that now that we're back into the, again, but, because of you'd go on your home visits and everything like that. And it was so interesting when I went with Clint on his home, when we went on at that time, you could have your 6 visits or 5 visits, whatever it was. But, when we went to do our visits at the school, our official visits, it was a little bit, it was interesting because I was on the other side, listening to the coaches and their why and everything that they would say, and me, I was taking it in, because he was being recruited. So, and it was great. He got his first go around when he did, because like I said, he did do it too, because he transferred, but his first go around, he got it down to Arkansas, University of Arkansas, University of Florida, and then Florida State, of course, and he ended up choosing Florida State. And then the second go around, it was Auburn, WVU, and then South Florida. So, and he picked WVU. But like I said, it was interesting, like I said, doing it and being on the other end of the other side of the ball or whatever. So, but you do see, but you get it, you understand what they're coming from and what they've got to offer. And, and you just, so recruiting's always been something that we've always enjoyed. Everybody in the family has. Rick's always enjoyed recruiting. Some coaches don't care for it much, but he's never minded it. He's always felt like it was a challenge. And, so he's always been really, and active in the recruiting phase of it. And the boys too, they all feel pretty much the same way. So
I love it. It's a chance to get to know the families and the mothers. And
I've always enjoyed that. I've always enjoyed it. Yes.
It's so interesting too, because nowadays with social media, a lot of them will follow us and then end up not choosing us, right? Like they get a better offer or something somewhere else. And then you still stay friends with them. And they're like,
to this day, it's funny. But that's true. You still do. And it's interesting because like I have friends that are, of course, but at the time, I met them now, then they became players. So then I'm, the coach's wife and everything, but still, follow them and they follow me or whatever, because we still keep in touch. That's one thing that's great about social media. Yes. So I'm a big fan of that, but it is interesting just, the whole, and of course it's evolving still and changing a lot. The recruiting game has changed so much here in the last few years with everything, but still, it's still kind of, you still have those relationships and especially the coaches and the parents and everything still, it's a, or maybe might still be doing it just old school. Maybe they don't do that. And it's just,
now you have to share best coach's wife advice you could come up with if somebody says, maybe I should narrow it into, we talked about moves, maybe raising kids in this fishbowl.
Okay. That's interesting. That's interesting because they are in a fishbowl. And, I think that first of all, with move, I think everybody has to look at a move as a new adventure. I think it's something that it's something that's you've been placed with, and you've been given another opportunity to either share what you know or maybe to learn something from someone else. And so and then also to reestablish old relationships, maybe that you had previous. I mean, and like for staff wise, like now, like it's interesting for right now, the staff that's here for instance, last year, because Travis, my oldest, was up here, but we were at Jacksonville State. But the Jacksonville State staff had moved up to West Virginia, so I felt like I was a part of two staffs. And of course, now with Rita, and like I said, Rita Rodriguez is great, and we've been friends for so many years and everything. So it's just so fun to reminisce about all of our things that we've done in the past at ball games, and are just funny things that's happened to us and everything. So it's nice to rekindle all those relationships over again. And then as far as like with raising kids, I would say, be consistent, but you got to do what you feel like is best for your kids. Everybody has different opinions on, moving and everything. And I think just different situations. We were always very strict parents because, boys, you got to, so I can't speak for everyone, of course, but in my situation, and we were, but also gave them the opportunity to, and I hope that they realized that they may hear things about their dad. You can't listen to that, and especially now with the social media stuff, it's really pretty strong. So, you can't isolate them. You can't keep them from hearing that stuff. You just kind of have to let them know that, your daddy, how hard he works, and that people don't realize. Nobody wants to win more than these coaches. Nobody wants to win more than those coaches and those coaches' families. I mean, it is, but again, I think that that's something that you just have to try to, instill in them, that they know, be strong. You're going to hear stuff and you're going to have to try not to react to it. And like I said, it's worse now. My kids are older, so they know, not to do that. And I think it's worse now with social media as far as that goes, when you hear the negativity. And that's something I don't pay any attention to during the season. I don't, because there's always anybody out there can say anything that they want to say with no repercussions whatsoever. And it's like, I don't want, and I take everything to heart. I'm very, as my daughter-in-law says, I have 3 wonderful daughter-in-laws. I'm so blessed. But the one that's probably sitting in the other room there, she always tells me that she feels like I'm an empath, that I feel everything from everyone. So I can't listen to I don't want to hear anything that's negative. Yeah. So don't even tell me, let me be happy. Let me live in this world that I live in, that things look happy and bright, and let me go on with that. I don't want to negative.
I don't want to hear the negative. There you go. That's a good way to block it out, because it isn't doing good.
No. There's nothing you can't change people's feelings. I think sometimes I can, because that's just me, but I can't. I really know that I can't, but, and sometimes, I like to surround myself with people who are positive, and, I don't want that negative stuff. And so don't tell me anything if you're going to say bad things.
I agree. Okay, so tell me about Mrs. Bowden, what you learned from her staff.
They were dear mom. That's what that's what her grandkids call her, dear mom. And they have so many of them, and she's living in Auburn now. And we had Diane Andrews was with us there, Mickey Andrews' wife, Diane. And they were all such, they had been in the business forever, but they'd been at Florida State for so long. And that doesn't usually happen. We move so much. So that was unusual. But Rick learned so much from Coach Bowden. And so that was fun. And Ann was great. She's so gracious and had so many children and so many grandchildren. So that was fun to be around too, and she was always just a very classy woman. Just every time you could see her, and handled everything very well. To a wonderful, and then at Auburn, we were with Terry Saban, and Terry's wow, just great. She's a wonderful head coach's wife, and always brought the staff together. So that was great. Rita Rodriguez, can't say enough. Always very close, tries to bring the staff. We have a Bible study, just different things that are, and we're all in different points in our lives. That's what you find, because here I am on the downside and everything. And like, I've got the grandkids now. And then I've got all my 3 daughter-in-laws who are all young wives and everything. So it's nice when you do come into a place and you've got that sense that you've got other people that you can count on. Maybe your family is far away, or and it's always nice to have somebody there that can back you up, or that if you're not if you're kind of down. We all have those days where we're down, or things aren't going quite well, or we have some sickness in the family and everything, and it's just nice to know that you have somebody that you can count on. So I don't know if that.
You have been on some amazing staffs. You mentioned it, the Saban staff, Bowden staff. You've won national titles. Is there something, if you can think about, that these coaches and head coaches' wives are doing to build culture that you don't always see every single place? What do you think is a little bit different about the times that the winning is showing up? What are they doing behind the scenes that's really changing the culture of the staff?
Okay. Well, I don't know that there's, I think it's a combination of things. It's, I think you've got to find, like I said, I've been on some staffs that have been really, really tight. I've been on some staffs that not as tight as others. I think that's important that they all are supportive, whether or not they're, like I said, a lot of times people are working and they can't participate in things, than others that are, maybe you've got some stay-at-home moms and everything. But I think like I said, here, I think family night's always been great. And that's something that we've always had at those places where, we've had them here. We haven't had it everywhere, but we've had them at West Virginia. We had it at Auburn. We had it at Florida State. We had it at LSU. It's like, there was at least one night a week where the families were brought around, so that might be one thing that was pretty encouraging, that made, because I realize that it's a business, and it's getting more so that it's more of a business, but you still have that family aspect that I think you've got to look out for, and maybe do a little bit more to, because it's a struggle. It's a struggle when you live away and you've got small kids, and the guys work these crazy hours. They work crazy hours. So, but I think it's great if you have, at least my experience. Again, I can't speak for everyone, but it's been good when they've been try to bring everybody together, and not everybody can come at all of the time, but at least you've got that option,
right?
You've got that option open. So I don't know if that answers the question or not, but
it does. It makes you think, because when you spend time together, you form unity. And I think the quickest thing that tears culture down is that where they're not in alignment.
That's true.
And they're talking badly about each other, or they're talking about it, factions of the staff get into a negative space. I think that's the quickest thing to destroy character, destroy culture. Yeah.
I agree, and like I said, we've all had, and I have to say this too, what something may work at one place may not work so well at another place, whether it is the logistical aspect, because if you've got a small town, it's easier to get people together than if you are in a city, you know what I'm saying? So that's kind of hard, to do too. But most of them are in the smaller communities. You do have the city ones, but so you hope that they work that out too. But at least, like I said, we've been fortunate enough to be on staffs where that's been part of it. And I've, like I said before, every place that I've been, I felt like I've gotten something from it. There's nothing been, not that it's all been great. I mean, like I said, you have your bad time for sure, but I think you just have to kind of look at it as it's a new adventure, and lots of good things still await. Yeah.
He's had a tremendous amount of success. Is there anything you've done behind the scenes?
Well, let's see. I'm a big baker. I bake a lot. So there are certain things that the boys have always liked that, and when I said boys just in, I was referring to the offensive linemen.
Right.
You know, and so I usually I'll send in treats, you know, at least once a week, that sort of thing and everything. It was a little bit more difficult when I was at Jacksonville because when we were at Jack State, I was everywhere else because Travis was at Coastal, Clint was at Georgia Southern, you know, Chance was with the Rams. So when I wasn't with one of their games or whatever, but I tried to do that. But I'm planning on, of course, with the boys being here and I'll be here more often. And so I'll go back because that's what we did every week when we were at, most recently, because we were at Florida State for quite a while. We were there for 12 seasons, which is quite a while. And, but every week the wives would bring in treats for the players. So, you know, that was something that we've always done. We just always have done that. And like I said, after a win, you know, I'd make their cream cheese squares. So, I did not send in that recipe because I didn't like the picture as well. But, but that is something that all the players tend to ask for. We just met on Monday night when we went up to eat here with the new players, and I went over to introduce myself, you know, because we haven't gone through a season yet or anything. And I just wanted to introduce myself, guys. I'm Coach Trickett's wife. Of course, now I have to say I'm Coach Trickett's wife and Coach Trickett's mother. But
Yes.
but I said, you know, and we had one of our kids that was on staff at Jackson. He said, "Are you going to be making those things?" And
So they're famous. They're famous. I love it.
Yeah. So
okay, so how do you keep your husband encouraged on the times that he applied for a job, which we know they don't apply? It's you think there's no applications, but you think you're going to get to go somewhere with somebody, and then all of a sudden you kind of get ghosted.
And well, you know, that has happened. My husband really kind of handles all that himself. He's definitely old school. So, you know, but I'd have to look way back in our early part of our marriage for that to sort of happen. And you know, and he's always been, well, if it doesn't happen, then it's just not supposed to be. And then just moves on. He's not one to, you know, it's probably I'm the one that would mostly take things to heart, you know, and try to get over the disappointment, but he's already moved on. So he didn't really rely on me too much for that. He's pretty strong. So you know, and not to say that you're not, if you don't, but it's just, that's something that we definitely experienced, but just that I probably wasn't a whole lot of help to him. I mean, you know, he was probably more help to me than it's okay. It'll be fine. We got a job. Because that's the bottom line, as long as you got a job. Now with my kids, you know, we're all like, we always want a job, you know, because you have those years, because we all get together in the summer, my family at our beach house now, and at Christmas, you know, we work it out, whether through bowl games, before, after, whatever, but those are the times. So it's like now it's always like we just all want to have a job when it's around Christmas time. Just thank the Lord. It doesn't matter as long as we're all employed.
Because it always happens right around Christmas.
Yes. And which is so hard. It's so hard for families. It's so hard that it happens at that time of the year. People just don't realize, I mean, the fans and everything, it's devastating.
It is.
It's devastating. But with that being said, it's like, this too shall pass. I mean, as you know, but it is, we've gone through some rough Christmases because you know, somebody didn't have a job and then somebody else has got a job, and then you don't want to be, you're happy for them, but disappointed for the other one. So when you've got kids in it, you know, it's
your heart's on your sleeve.
Your heart's on your sleeve. And so, and it's interesting being a mother of coaches, because as you know, of being a mother of any child and their success, no matter what it's in, whether it's in the school, whether it's on a dance recital, no matter what they're doing, you feel their pain as much, if not more, than they do.
Not more.
Yes. And that is how it is when these guys are coaching and it doesn't come out right. I'm devastated. I feel that as much as They do, and their wives, and it's so it's times 4 for me.
So you sound like very similar to me, which we feel this. We walk this out, we feel it very strongly. How do you stay balanced and steady? Because I know you feel like the roller coaster of the highs and the lows. How do you pull yourself back?
Well, I'll be real honest with you. When we left Florida State, it was hard. It was hard. We'd been there so long, and it was just crushing. I had so many wonderful, good friends on our staff. I mean, we would take little trips together, just, great time. And so it was crushing that we were all going our separate ways, and at that time, I didn't know, because Rick was certainly of the retirement age, what was going to come next. And, so that there was a very short time there that I thought, which for those older wives, if they're still around, it was like, oh my gosh, this has been my whole life forever. And now this is not going to be my life. I mean, so it's like, wait a minute, how am I going to adjust this? It's like a whole new world, that. So what I did was I tried to concentrate basically on my grandchildren. That was just my saving grace, where I could be of help to my sons and their wives and their families, because they're starting out in this business and in this profession. And so I knew that as a young wife, what maybe I didn't get, because of course my mother and my mother-in-law did not know. They were not coaches' wives, so they didn't know. But since I knew that what my girls were going through, I wanted to be a help to them, So like every move that they've made, all of them, and I'm going through 3 right now, I've tried to be there to help the packing, whether it's help with the actual packing or with the kids so that they can do their thing. Then the unpacking. Like I've got scheduled right now. I'm scheduled for 2. Right now I'm doing Rick's. I'm trying to get him moved into his place, because we've got an apartment up here, with us still having our home down there, just to get us started. And, we may buy another house here. We're not for sure, but I want to get him set up so that he's good to go. And then like at the end of the month, I'm going to, I've already helped Kaylee pack some, but she's going to be unloading, and then Ashley and Chance will be in April. So so that's what I did right afterward. I thought I just kind of immersed myself in my family, and it's been great, because like I said, it's been great because they're all still in football. So it was just kind of a different role. I just kind of stepped back from the coach's wife role and became more of the mother role. But again, that's because that's the point in my life that I was. That doesn't always happen. I mean, when we've had to be let go and everything, it's a different story. I've tried to navigate that, but it's I think that you just have to try to find something that you can look forward to, to find a positive, to look forward to, something in your future, and just kind of not think about those negative things and everything. So, and we all have them.
Okay. Most rewarding part to you about this journey you've been on?
Most rewarding. Well, I have to say, there's probably so many. One thing that I'm very proud of is that, and it's not anything that I've done. It's actually Rick, but he's been in this for so long, and he's had he's a tough coach. But you get what you see. There's he's that's his personality, and everybody that knows him knows that. But he's hard on his players. But to this day, he gets repeated, and always has. After these kids, when they get out in the world, they write him letters. They send him text. They give him phone calls, thanking him. I didn't understand it at the time, Coach. But not only were you trying to help coach me and be a better football player, but you were trying to help me be a better man. You were trying to help me be a better stand-up person, take care of my family, take care of my mom, take care, and everything. Help me know what I need to do in the workplace to be, because there is life after football. So football's not always the end, So I think I've been so proud of, and that's really all him. I have not had anything to do with that, but it's just something that I truly appreciate, and truly, that I appreciate that for him, because I might want to criticize him, but I don't want to hear anybody else criticize him. And really the same thing goes for my boys. I don't want to hear anybody criticize.
I mean, after a loss, do you have a few questions that you want to ask, or to wait and don't ask some questions?
Okay. Everybody handles this differently. And like I said, since I've got 3 of them that are also coaching the sons, I've noticed that everybody handles this differently. Rick is fine right after, my husband Rick is fine right after the ball game. If things didn't go well, he'll be point blank, tell you exactly. He doesn't sugarcoat anything. This or it's the next day when he watches the film. That's when he gets mad. He watches it. It makes him mad all over again. So everybody handles it differently. But then you got to move on and go on to the next one. But when I first was married, and when I first, I remember I didn't even want to open my blinds the next day. And I've gotten past that, but it does tend to weigh on you, and I'm not very good at that. I'm not very good at putting it aside, because it kind of hangs around until you get that next win. I mean, it's I need to work on that. It's a work in progress. See,
I love your honesty. You're like 45 years in. That's something I want to work on. Yeah. I love this. I love that. Same, because I feel it. I'm like, okay, this is nothing to the world.
Oh, exactly. Exactly. It's not, and life is going on, but it's like, oh man, we just enjoy. You just feel
when you win, it's like the air smells different.
It's wonderful.
It is wonderful. And you wish you didn't live and breathe on this stuff, but you still do. I mean,
you do. And no, it's not brain surgery, but
I know.
It is what it is. And so
it is what it is.
No, you just, I'm like I said, it's not something that I've mastered.
Yeah.
I have not mastered losing. I hate to lose. So, but it does happen. And so you just try to do the best you can do. And, I might, again, old school here, think of something, what can I make that's going to I can eat that would make me feel better.
I know. For sure. Like what the comfort food.
I'm not going to go say, oh, I think I need to go exercise. I should, but it's not.
It's going to be like, what can I make and bake?
Yes. Yeah. What sounds good? So
yeah, definitely. Okay. Rapid fire. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Who's the most famous person in your phone?
Terry Sabin.
She's famous.
Yeah.
What's one item? And she's a dream interview, by the way. You might have to help me out there. What's one item on your bucket list you've checked off and one left to check off?
I don't know that I have a bucket list. I think that I'm very easily entertained. I'm very easily entertained. So I think maybe I'm just doing fine.
There you go. I like it.
I'm just doing fine.
Who are the last 3 people you have texted?
My husband, my daughter-in-law, Tiffany, and probably, I think I text both. We have a group chat. So probably all my kids.
There you go. Okay. The funniest account or reels that you follow on Instagram?
Well, they usually, now, like I said, I have a group of high school and grade school girls that I grew up with that every year we get together and we have a girls trip, and it's usually at my house since I'm at the beach, so it's usually the things that we are going to do when we're all together. So that's kind of it, and that's something, like I said, none of these young young people probably be interested in that, but they're fun. And it's just, silly. There's a lot of dancing on mine. I'm a, former dancer and cheerleader and stuff. So there's a lot on my stuff. So yeah.
Okay. What about your life has impressed your kids throughout your life?
My boys are real hard to impress. Let's be honest. Probably staying married to their dad as long as I am. That's probably the biggest one. They're or probably my cooking. Because I cook and I bake, and a lot of people don't do that anymore so much, and I still do that. One of the kids, my grandkids' friends, was over there. They said, "Oh, because I was cooking." They're like, "Oh, you're a cooking grandma," and I said, "Yeah, I thought everybody's great." Oh, no, my grandmas are not cooking grandmas. I thought, okay, but no, I'm a cooking grandma. So
cooking grandma, I like it.
That's probably it.
Who would you want to go see in concert, or who have you seen that's been fun?
Oh, well, I tell you who we're going to see is Morgan Wallen. But yes, we're coming up. That's coming up, and Ella Langley. We're going to see them this summer. So that was my Christmas present from Travis and Tiffany. So that's coming up this summer. So I'm looking forward to that. And of course, I've seen, years ago, my husband's a big country western fan. So we would go to mostly, all the country western. So we've seen just about, and Brad Paisley, and I mean, we've seen them all. I mean, most all of them and everything. So that's probably right now. Riley Green, who is, are you familiar with Riley? Okay. He is a good friend of the Rodriguezes and of Rick and everything, because he played at Jacksonville State. So, and he's from there and has a home there and everything. So it's kind of fun been watching his career, take off and everything. So
he's huge right now.
Huge. Yeah. So that's probably it right there. And I love Taylor Swift. So, my granddaughter loves Taylor Swift. And so that's a biggie too. So I would love to see Taylor Swift. Outside
of West Virginia Stadium, what's one of your favorite football stadiums to go watch a game in?
Well, I love Florida State. Love Florida State Stadium. It's great. Got a big statue of Coach Bowden out front, and loved Florida State. Loved Auburn. Everything. LSU, Death Valley was great. It was so fun. I really liked all of our places. I can probably tell you places that I'm not as crazy about than I am, just because of the steepness in some of them that we've been as, guests, as opposed to when we've actually been there. But that's always been fun. And it's always been fun. We went to South Carolina year before last, and that was my first time there. And that was a fun stadium. So there's several, I really haven't had too many. There's only one stadium I think of that, because it is so steep, that was a little bit scary. But other than that, they've all been pretty good. And it's interesting because, I've been involved in so many different rivalries, like the Ole Miss and Mississippi State, or the Alabama, Auburn, or the Florida, and all, just different ones and everything. Florida State, and but I think it's great. The fans love their schools as much as they do, and the old saying is, with coaches goes, you're just a fan of whoever's paying that paycheck. So
right.
That just is. That's
right.
Yeah.
Fun. This has been a joy, Tara. Thank you so much for your time and wisdom.
Certainly. I hope it all went okay and everything. But like I said, I'm old school and old and everything else. So, but I don't know how.
You're amazing. Thank you.
But okay. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much.
This podcast is brought to you by Ruler of Hope. Ruler of Hope is a nonprofit that supports medically fragile children. If you'd like to make a tax-deductible donation, you can use Venmo at Ruler-Hope or online at rulerofhope.org.
For a replay of this episode or previous episodes, visit coacheswifelife.org and follow us on social media at Coaches Wife Life.